Good morning, everybody. I am bringing on my friend Simon Chard from UK, and just like to get some of his ideas about mental health and how it pertains to dentistry. So let's bring him on.
Hey,
Hey
good
buddy, how's it
morning or
going?
good evening to you.
Yeah, it's 5 o'clock here in very cold London.
Yeah, it's 9 a.m. here, so just getting the day started.
How are things?
Thanks
Nice,
for,
nice new hair.
Thank you, thank you. It's bringing me back to the 90s,
I like it.
when
I like it.
I had this. I think you texted me and said you had the same hair, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Mine. I actually had like a quiff. Is it called a quiff in America? Like
No.
when this bit's like just like on its own, and then that was that actually dyed like orange. It looked
Uh-huh.
horrendous. But annoyingly, you seem to be able to pull off any hairstyle, which is ridiculous.
Thank you, thank you. First of all, congratulations on the new podcast.
Thanks, buddy. Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to having you on.
Yeah, yeah.
I
I
actually,
listened
I've,
to it
I've just come
yesterday.
off. I'll show you my my setup here. I've uh,
Okay,
I've just come off filming an interview. So
nice.
yeah, it's cool. It's a real passion. It's a real passion project. So I'm as I say, that was my first interview. So I'm buzzing right now. I'm really excited with how it's gone. And yeah, it's gonna be fun.
Yeah, I learned a lot yesterday just in your kind of intro, the first podcast that you did, talking about your morning routine and some of the other topics you brought up that I think definitely relate to what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, I'm
So
sure.
for
Sure.
anybody who hasn't started listening to Simon's podcast, it's called One Small Change. You can find it anywhere that you listen to your podcast. I listened to it on Spotify yesterday. So yeah.
Thanks, man. Thanks for the plug.
Sure, sure. So I wanted to bring you on because you were one of the first one of the other dentists that I had ever seen speaking about mental health, and you've actually done lectures on this before. And so wanted to get your idea on where maybe we should start with the why first. Like, why is mental health so important, especially for our profession?
Well, I mean, I think it's important to say that it started off being so important for me because I was struggling with it, and my personal view is that everyone struggles with mental health to a certain extent, and it's not a black or white thing. You don't have a mental health issue, or you're
Right.
completely healthy and you're fine. It's a grey scale, and so I think that it's really important to talk about, and so I didn't really give it too much thought talking about it on my socials because I tend to be fairly transparent and just talk about how I'm feeling in general. But the moment I started talking about it, I saw the reaction, and then that's when the light bulb clicked on for me, and I thought, wow, this is actually a much bigger problem than I thought. And yeah, as I'm sure you found doing the research to create the lecture that I gave last year, it's mind-boggling to see what a state we're in as a profession, I think, and what a lack of communication and transparency there's been historically. I
Yeah.
don't know if it's the same in the US. I'm sure it is, but in the UK, it's like a standard thing. It's almost like a badge, not a badge of honor, but it's just a weird thing that we always say in the UK, like, "Oh yeah, dentists, yeah, second most likely to kill themselves," and it's like,
Right.
what? Why are we accepting that? Why is that a thing
Yeah.
that we just say like it's not important when actually like our friends are killing themselves um, because because of heightened scenarios that present themselves that are specific to our industry that no one
Yeah.
else would be able to understand, and that's
Right.
why I thought it was so important for me to speak up about it with my platform, with my profile, and it's I think it's therapeutic for me as well to speak to other like you've helped me so much. Like the fact that I know that you've been through the same stuff that I've been through makes me
Yeah.
feel better about going through that stuff.
Right.
And I'm sure that we just need that ripple effect to go out into the profession further and further, I think.
Yeah, a few things that you said that I really resonated with was the fact that one, when I started talking about it, the impact, the effect that I saw of people, you know, like, I'm sure you're the same way. I'll make a great slide and I'll you know, take all this time and it's a smile design or blah blah blah, whatever.
Yeah,
And you know, people are like, hey, great case, you know.
Yeah, if
But
you're
then,
lucky.
yeah, and then you say one thing about mental health or anxiety or depression or something, and you get like 30 DMs saying thank you for that, and you know, I'm going through the same thing, and I was talking so much clinically and realizing, like, you know, we need to have clinical training, but this is just such like a basic human problem, and especially in our close-knit profession, I just saw the change that it made and was like, oh my gosh, this is really a big deal. And I think the same thing, the other thing that you said that I really resonated with was the fact that it was therapeutic for me to talk about it, because I always say this, people are like, thanks, Kyle, for, you know, bringing this out to our profession. I'm like, don't give me too much credit, because I did it selfishly first. The first reason that I did it was because I wanted to feel better, and I had 100 people, you know, sitting in a chair that they weren't going to leave for an hour. So I said, this is what I'm going to talk about. And gosh, once I started talking about it, I felt so much better. And then people would contact me, or if it was in person back in the day, they'd come up to me and say, I'm going through the same thing. And I thought I was on an island. I thought I was, you know, the only person, or especially I thought I was the only, you know, speaker that was going through something like this, because you see all these speakers, all these guys that, you know, you and I look up to, and you think like, gosh, they've got the life, right? And you find out that they're just the same as all of us. You know, no matter
absolutely.
how successful someone is, no matter how good their marriage looks, no matter how much money they have, at some point, they may go through a downtime. You know, not everybody, you can't stay up all the time.
And sometimes it's those guys. I mean, that was the one things that really shocked me. It was those people who I look up to, who would send me that DM and be like, oh, actually, yeah, no, I really struggle with this as well. I had to go to therapy, or I had to do this. And you're like, wow, like your life, like from the outside is absolutely amazing. Like you're an amazing clinician, and you've got a great family, and you've got everything that society tells us that we should be looking for. But that's not enough. I mean, life is so much more complex than just fulfilling society's like tick list of success, right? It's it goes a lot deeper than that, and I think that's what is becoming more and more au fait and more commonplace to talk about, which is great, because the more we talk about it, the less people feel that there's no way out, which is obviously the worst case scenario for the topic that we're talking about.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that's why I wanted to bring you on. Of course, you know, you're, I would say, my best friend in the UK. And I wish that we lived a block away, so our kids could play and our wives could know each other. There's a few of my kind of remote friends that I'm like, gosh, I really wish they lived so close. The other one is my friend Phil Walton from Toronto, and I'm like, he's the same as us, you know, he's got like a young kid and kind of the same thing. But I wanted to use our platforms to get this out, because I want it to just not be taboo. I want it to be like, use us as a scapegoat for other people to talk about it, you know, say, oh, did you see Kyle and Simon talking about this? Like, I'm really having a hard time with that. Have you ever gone through something like this? And just like use our platforms to make it okay to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure it's been significantly worse for a lot of people over COVID times. I mean, we're back in a lockdown over here. I don't know what status is like in California, but we're back on a full lockdown. And thankfully, dental practices are still open, which is absolute sanctity and heaven for me at the moment to be able to go to work still. But yeah, it's pretty rough, to be honest.
Yeah, it's a hard time right now, I think, emotionally, financially, for so many people. Like you said, we can have gratitude that most dental offices in the world are open now. At some point they've been on and off, but at least for the dentist to get out, still be able to make money, support their families, pay their loans.
Yeah,
that's a positive thing that we can look forward to. You're real big on daily routines and habits, and I know a lot of the habits, you talked about this in your podcast, directly relate back to mental health. Can you mention a few of them?
yeah, sure. So yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, most of my habits and most of my morning routines are framed around mental health, and I guess the reason for that is I would tend to feel most anxious actually going to, just in the morning, going to work, historically, or even, for example, Sunday night, the night before going to work on Monday morning.
Yeah.
And that's not because I don't love my job, because I do. I love it so much. It's a great passion of mine. But I can't really tell you why that anxiety built there. But what I found by taking full control of the 3 or 4 hours before I see my first patient made such a dramatic impact on how I felt going to bed, about waking up the next day, and then how I felt in the morning as well. So basically, my first patient's at 8:15, and so I wake up at 4:45, which is probably a fair bit earlier than the majority of the population, I guess. I go to bed fairly early.
I like it because I can talk to you at night before I go to bed. That's why I like you waking up early.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, our time zones are getting closer. But yeah, so I go to bed fairly early. I go to bed about sort of 9:30, 10, so that I get a decent amount of sleep, because sleep's really important to me, and from a physiological point of view and from a mental health point of view, it's equally as important. So I try and get 7 hours, and that seems to work okay for me. And then, so I wake up at 4:45. First thing that I do is I meditate. So I meditate using this guided meditation which is free on Spotify. It's just, it's by a guy called Alan Watts. If you just search it on Spotify, you should be able to find it. And it's basically just a 15-minute meditation, nothing fancy. I mean, I've done all of Headspace and Calm and Waking Up and all these apps. But I've just sort of defaulted back to this now because it just works for me, to be honest. It's 5 minutes of him talking about being present and ignoring external stimuli, 5 minutes talking about breathing, and then it's 5 minutes with no talking, but just sort of Buddhist type music, like sort of temple music, calming music, for sort of self-guided meditation. And I've the reason that I meditate, there's loads and loads. Firstly, everything I do is based on science. There's loads of studies, randomized control studies on mindfulness-based stress reduction, which is a specific type of meditation, shows that it works by basically the same path size to improve your brain health and to calm the mind and reduce your incidences of mental health issues. So that's why I do it. And for me personally, I get great acute and immediate benefit from it, as in I feel better straight away. If I'm stressed or I've woken up in a bad mood, then the meditation really helps with that. But then there's like a cumulative impact that I've found over time, that my general anxiety level, if I was to score it on a daily basis, it's probably dropped by 1 or 2 points by doing the meditation every single day. So it's 15 minutes. I can find 15 minutes in the day to do it normally. And I run 4 businesses, and I have a small child and a busy social life. So there are no excuses with all these things. As I said to someone the other day, you make time for the stuff that you value. So I value that time very much. And that's why I find time in the morning to do it. So anyway, that's what I do. I do that meditation. And that's been really, really powerful for me. And then the second thing I do, which is of equal import, well, actually, sorry, after that, I then go and do a load of emails, and if I'm doing a presentation or doing a pitch for Parlour, then I'll get as much of that done there as I can do. And then once I've done that, then I exercise. So exercise for me, double benefit. Physically keeps me in fairly decent shape. Which probably 10 years ago was the only reason that I did it, was to try and have my beach abs. Never quite got there, but always try it. But to be honest, now exercise for me, and I exercise every single day, even if it's just 30 minutes. The main reason I exercise is for mental health. And you can see my Peloton bike here, which is my new addiction. You need to get one of these, Kyle, so we can race.
Yeah. So I'm in the process of moving, and that's a goal of mine when I get the new house. So
brilliant.
Yeah.
So yeah, the beauty of the Peloton is that 30 minutes you can burn 600 calories, and the feeling when you get off, because I'm dripping. Anyone who follows me on Instagram has seen that I tend to post every day about it, because I just think it's good for accountability, and hopefully it inspires others to do the same. But the way I feel coming off the bike versus clipping into the bike is almost a different human being. So I mix that in with strength training as well. And I've got a bench and some free weights and stuff. And yeah, that's it. And then get ready and go to work. So that's my morning routine. And it's been, honestly, I genuinely go to bed now. Like, you know, when you go to bed and you've got something really exciting to look forward to the next day. Yeah. I genuinely go to bed and I'm looking forward to meditating and exercising. Like, it's a weird sensation, but it's it's been really, really positive for me.
Yeah. So in the light side course, we have a whole section called DERMS, which is diet, exercise, relationships, meditation, and sleep. And we go over all the research that you're talking about, all the research about exercising, meditation, and sleep, and all of that. So and specifically, like you said, we're going over it in relation to mental health, and all of the science that I'm showing is specifically for mental health, and longevity a little bit too, but
they go hand in hand, right?
Living long, exactly. Living long and having a good life and having less anxiety and those whole topics. So thanks for
it's amazing the impact. I mean, you look at stuff like I did Suresh's sleep apnea course recently, sleep apnea airway course, and you look at the impact that cortisol has on the heart and on the heart tissue and your chance of having heart attacks. And with sleep apnea, they show, I think you're 5 times more likely to have a heart attack if you're a smoker. You're 23 times more likely if you have sleep apnea. So it just shows you the impact of that sort of cortisol and the stress and all of that has such a big impact on our physical health, not just our immediate mental health. So yeah, it's really important. And diet's a massive one. I mean, I love the stat 25 to 35% reduction in mental health issues with a Mediterranean or Japanese diet. Like that for me is great because I love Mediterranean and Japanese food. So
same with me. Yeah, that's basically how my family eats, is kind of the Mediterranean diet. And we talk about this in the light side course. Mediterranean diet got voted the best diet, or the best diet for mental health, I think is what it is. I got to look at the study again, but yeah. And what's nice about it is that it's forgiving. It's not too restrictive. Like, you can still have a glass of wine. You can still have some meat if you want, it's like, it's not one of these crazy diets where it's like, you have to eat this all the time, which I think is
they love the carb. They love the carbs in the Mediterranean, certainly.
Yes. Yeah. Which is nice, right? You can have a nice crunchy piece of bread with your dinner and not feel bad.
I think the easiest switch for me for a diet that is better for your mental health is just to eat whole foods. Just eat good, I mean, it's easy to say when you've got the money to spend on high quality ingredients, but if you're a dentist, you probably do. So stop buying processed food altogether. Like, if you can avoid it, just don't buy processed food. Like, the bread that you buy, go to the farm shop or the local bakers. Like, we've all just got to go a bit more. There he is.
Huh? Okay. He's done with his cereal. He just wanted to announce that to everybody. He's done with his cereal.
But yeah, that's a really it's simple in your mind to make that cut and say, I'm going to try and eat things that actually are in their pure form, and then chop them up and then eat them. That is a lot
Right.
Better for the brain health, I would say.
So people often ask me, they say like, why do we have to take a CE course about this? Why don't we learn this earlier? What are your thoughts about like kind of mental health training, whether it's for dentistry or just the general population? When should we be learning about this?
Well, I was actually just recording a podcast with a guy on Zoom, and we were talking about therapy. And I mean, the perfect example for me with training in this department is it's exactly the same as training at the gym. Like you work out so that you're not, because you have a chronic, well, sometimes you have to have physio for a chronic condition, but
Sure.
most of the time, if you're in good shape already, then if you break your leg, you're going to recover faster. So it's exactly the same with mental health issues, right? If you've been training your mind your whole life, and you've done the work historically and regularly, i.e. how I do with meditation, then hopefully, if and when that stressful life event presents itself, which it will do, because everyone's going to die and everyone has a limited time on this earth, and people get illness and people get cancer, etc., etc. If you've trained your mind to be ready for those situations, then you'll still be super upset and emotional when they happen, but you won't go into a dark, deep depression, or you're less likely to, because you have the skills to manage them. And that's what it's all about for me. The thing that makes me most worried in life is that I love my life right now so much, and I feel so grateful and happy with everything that I've been blessed enough to have, that I'm waiting for that horrible phone call to come that something has happened. And I mean, COVID's been that to a certain extent.
Sure.
And it's certainly, the first lockdown especially was really, really brutal. But yeah, so that's my feeling on training on this matter. It's certainly not something that we're taught at school. It's certainly not something we're taught at university. Although we should be in both of those scenarios, I think, personally.
Yeah. So, I'm trying to do it now for adults, professionals, etc. However, my goal is to really have this training in dental school. And then even going back further, like with my son, we're trying to train him on mindfulness and gratitude now, when he's 4.
Yeah.
So, the Headspace app has little videos for kids. And so we do the one, and it has, it's from Sesame Street. So we have like Sesame Street, they call it Monster Meditation. And so trying to teach
That's great.
my son,
I'll check that out.
Yeah. So
I didn't realize that.
Great for your little girl. I think they're like 3 minutes or something. And so it's just like getting them started on relaxing, breathing. We do it before bed for him to kind of like relax a little bit, because he's a little wound up sometimes. So we do monster meditations with that. But I'm starting now with Lightside, starting at the crisis prevention stage, right? You have a very high risk group. More than likely, they're going to go through a dark time based on the different factors of our profession. And let's try to prevent it there. Hopefully, I can do a good job of that. Eventually, I'd like this to just be taught in dental school. And how nice would it be that, like, in dental school, maybe we're doing meditation sessions and we're talking about diet and we're talking about communication with patients and informed consent and things like slow dentistry, like you and I both practice. Getting the young doctors aware of the fact that they may go through this hard time, how to prevent it from the beginning, or if it does happen, then how to deal with it correctly. Because people always told me the same thing when I was in dental school. I was going out a lot, single, going out dancing, blah blah blah, and I'd meet people and they'd say, "Oh, you're in dental school. Why would you do that? Dentists all commit suicide." And I'd be like, "All the dentists I know, have a nice house and they have nice families and they, work 4 days a week. There's no way they're going through a hard time. That must have been in the 50s or in the 20s when there was no anesthesia or something. Like, no way, they're well respected." And I just realized that none of them were talking about it. It was still the same thing.
But that's why you're bang on. Like, it should be being normalized by the tutors and the teachers at university, because then if and when it does eventually hit you, it doesn't hit you like such a train out of nowhere. You're actually almost prepared and ready for it, because it's a natural and normal thing that if you're a perfectionist and things fail and they're out of your control, that you're going to be stressed about it, and it can lead to burnout and anxiety. Like, that's normal. Like, if you get sued, you are going to be anxious. You have your career on the line again over something that's out of your control. How do you deal with that? Like, these are all things that are super, super commonplace in both of our countries. I mean, litigation's out of control. So, I mean, I remember distinctly my first day at dental school, the dean, or the vice dean, I think it was, he's the first thing he said was something along the lines of, "You're going to get sued 6 times in your career." And it's like, okay, great.
Oh my
Thanks
God.
for that one. Thanks for that one. Like, I mean, he didn't lead out with that, but that was in his opening speech.
Wow.
And so yeah, that information is freely spread, but then the actual management techniques and tools aren't at all. And I think things for me like stoicism has been so, honestly, I can't just being aware of the concepts of stoicism have been so powerful for me over the last 18 months, 2 years. And that's just reading a few books and reading a few quotes. And it doesn't necessarily need to be, you don't need to be like a Buddhist or a full therapist yourself to have some frameworks in place to allow you to deal with difficult times more effectively, I think.
Yeah. One thing that you said, I think that I want to touch on is, if people knew more that other people were going through this, then when they go through a hard time, they're not thinking this like, "I'm the only person, what's wrong with me?" Like, I must be a terrible dentist. Because I think that's a misconception. When I was in dental school, or even a younger doctor, I thought only bad dentists get sued. And what I realized is that has nothing to do with you're a bad dentist or a good dentist. Many great dentists get sued. Some of the best dentists in the world get sued. Now, you may be more at risk if you're doing, crappy work and you're lying to patients, or you're doing treatment that doesn't need to be done. But for me, if I had anybody talk to me before I went through my hard time, I would have felt better about it. If anybody had mentioned it, but nobody had mentioned it. And so I think that it's so important that, you talk about it and I talk about it, and especially many of our friends that have bigger platforms talk about this, because all the little people that it's going to touch, I said little people because I'm thinking of them in the phone, all the people that it'll touch, and just them knowing like, hey, I'm not the only one. I know people I've even heard of people that have been through this before, and then they don't feel so alone, because it can be such an isolating profession. I know you work kind of in a group setting, I work in a group setting, but still in the US, over 50% of dentists work alone, and it can be isolating.
Yeah, well, I think the studies show that, like, if you work in a practice with less than 4 other clinicians or something, then your chance of mental health issues like skyrockets, right?
Yep, that's right.
So yeah, it's certainly more dangerous the less you interact with other professionals, and that's why I love academies and groups
Yes.
of dentists and all these things that I try and engage with, because firstly, it's great for your career to network with individuals, because
Yeah.
it's often not what you know, it's who you know. But more importantly, having that community, and again, having those relationships, just means that you have a good enough relationship that if you do have a real problem, then you have someone who can speak to you that gets where you're coming from. If you say that you perforated on upper right 6 MB2,
Right.
I always go to endo because I hate endo and I don't do endo anymore. So
Yeah,
when I did my interview with Ken Sirota, he was like, "Why do you always go to endo? I'm an endodontist."
Right. Yeah, well, I think that's a good example with community. You know, you and I kind of started talking on Instagram. We've met in person one time, and you know, we've both talked to each other about crises that we've been through.
Yeah.
And it's that aspect of community, and that's the same thing. That was why I started Lightside, was I wanted to have a group of people that could sit and talk openly about mental health, whether they've gone through it or not, because you're going to learn from the other people. Oh, this is, you know, because in the first course that we did, we had people that admitted, like, you know, hey, I did something wrong and that caused this big crisis in my life. Or the other thing where it's like, I did nothing wrong and I had this big crisis. And you can learn from all these people, learn how to prevent problems in your life, how to prevent dark times, and just have a community. And now, you know, some of the Lightsiders from the beginning, now they can message each other and say, like, hey, remember when Kyle talked about this or whatever?
Yeah.
I know you went through this. Is there anything that you can tell me? Because I'm going through the same thing. Just having someone else to lean on, so important in our profession.
Absolutely. And I think, to be honest, one thing that I don't like about our profession is the amount of negativity and trolling that happens between each other. And I know me and you have both be on the receiving end of unnecessary negativity, normally from people who don't know us. But actually, if people were more open and transparent about what the things they're going through and how they're feeling, you might find that there's less of that sort of activity, because realistically, everyone's going through something. Like, the person that's trolling you is probably going through some pretty bad shit themselves. And that's why they're trolling you, because they don't feel very good about themselves. So that's easy to say. When you're on the receiving end, it's not so easy to be as empathetic as that. I certainly struggle with that myself. The more open and honest we can all be about our emotions, hopefully the more caring the profession will be to itself. Because I think that sometimes we're our own worst enemies with how we treat ourselves and how we treat each other as dentists. For example, I mentioned before about the fact that everything fails, yet we still try and promise to our patients that everything's not going to fail. Like, you saw it on that video from Miguel Stanley the other day, where he was removing a lower 8 for a patient, and it was on the ID nerve, and he basically just said to her, "You're going to get paresthesia. Like, it's definitely happening. Do you consent to it?" And I love that. That's wicked. Like, I'm exactly the same in my clinic. I'm so negative, and I'm a positive person in general. But at the start of the treatment, I'm so negative, and I think patients really respond well to that. And it's those sort of things that I'm sure you'll go into detail on the course. And that for young grads, like it's so easy to overpromise and underdeliver when it's out of your control, and especially when your skill sets are still developing, which we all learn on the job in dentistry, right? Like, we don't do enough clinical training at university, therefore we have to do it on paying customers. That's the reality of most professions, I guess, but especially dentistry.
Yeah. In the course, we have a whole module on things to change in your clinical practice. And a lot of it is on informed consent. We give templates on what we call a treatment agreement, which is what we use for when we're doing like bigger treatments, you know, full mouth cases or 10 veneers or whatever it is. And it's just a template that we use, that we've developed over the last 7 years, that is just so straightforward and so negative, and says everything, you know, how much it's going to cost if something breaks, and the maintenance fees, you know, how much we need to see you. You may need to wear a night guard. We may need to get your sleep checked. Like, it goes into everything. And again, it's so negative, but gives, I can send it to you. And gives the patients really true informed consent. And then we sit down with the patient, like you saw in Miguel's video, and actually talk with them about it. It's not just like, here's this, sign it. You know, because then the patients are like, oh, it's a bunch of mumbo jumbo. I didn't read it.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's just stepping into that awkward conversation. It's not awkward, but it is for some people when they're not used to doing it, because we've not been trained in how to do it. Or
for me,
in the majority of cases.
I was so young that I was worried that people wouldn't trust me if I talked to them about failures. You know, I was like, they're not going to trust me in the first place because I looked too young when I got out of school. So why would I talk to them about having it fail? They're going to be like, oh, okay, well, you're talking about failures because you're young and you're inexperienced. And what I realized was that the more open I was, the more I talked about failures and was real with the patient and was like very human with the patient, the more they trusted me and the more treatment they wanted to do.
Yeah.
And the more money I ended up making, you know, if you think about it from a financial standpoint.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I would be worried about losing a case when it would end up them referring more patients to me. So it was,
and you build a proper relationship, and those people that you lose are actually the best people to lose, because they're not willing to accept that things fail, and they are going to blame you.
You're human, and they're human.
Yeah. Whereas the people who stay with you are the nice, normal patients who understand that things fail and that you're not doing it on purpose. You're trying to do the best job you can for them, but everything has a chance of failure. Yeah. It's really good.
Really great. So just in finishing this off, what advice do you have for either young doctors or other dentists in relation to mental health?
So, firstly, talk to each other and be kind to each other. I think is the best thing that I can say, because your best network are the peers who are at the same stage.
Yeah, I'd say in the trenches together.
Exactly. Like we're not in the trenches anymore. Like we are, but we're not. Like it's easy to say from, what am I now? 9 years qualified. It's a lot easier to say this now, for sure. Like when I was a young grad and I'd gone into really fancy clinics because I had loads of connections from the British Academy of Cosmetic Dentistry, and because I was passionate about what I did, it was much harder then, and that was when I really had my major difficulties. So yeah, speak to your friends, speak to your colleagues, be open and transparent with each other, and just look to improve yourself. I think if you're on a journey of self-improvement, don't think you're going to, I think the most important thing that has crystallized to me in the last few weeks and months is don't look to get to a goal or an end point where things will suddenly appear and be perfect.
That's exactly right.
Actually,
yeah, I thought that was now for me.
Yeah, but it's never like what do they call it? Gold medal syndrome, when like someone wins like the World Cup, or they win like Wimbledon tennis, or they win the Super Bowl, and then afterwards they're like, oh, I feel shit. Like, what now?
I'm the same person.
Yeah, exactly. So just enjoy the journey. And I think for me, the single most important thing for you as a clinician is building a relationship with your patients. Not a personal one, but a professional one. That means that actually, if something goes wrong, you can speak to them face to face and own up to the fact that it's gone wrong. Because the worst thing you can do when something goes wrong is try and bury it. And that's the whole concept of that black box thinking book from Matthew Syed, which I think should be.
I have to read that.
It's wicked. You'll love it.
I have to read it.
It's so good, and it should literally be given to everyone who litigates against dentists, every dentist who starts. Like, failures happen. Let's talk about them. The more we talk about them, the more everyone learns, and the better everyone gets. So there's less failures. So it's a win-win for everyone. But we have such a blame culture in our profession, which is just negative for everybody. So
yeah, we talk about this in the course. I did something called the triangle of blame, what I call, where you have the patient, the doctor, and all the other stuff that none of us can control, that we all forget about.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and before I used to think it was just the patient and the doctor, and one of us had to be blamed.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's just not the case. And I think relinquishing like stress over stuff that you can't control is the most important thing that you can do. That's a very stoic philosophy, but I saw a great chart the other day on Instagram that basically said how I'm feeling, and then about stuff that I can control, and then feel happy because it's under your control, or stuff that I can't control, still feel happy because you can't control it, so you don't need to worry about it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, there's a quote that I put on my lectures, and I say, don't stress about the things you can't control. And then I also have a thing that says, don't stress about the things you can control, because there's certain things you can control that people don't do. And this is kind of in relation to like guided surgery or smile design, or things where taking the extra steps reduces your stress. If you can control it, control it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And do it the way you want it. But if you can't control it, then you got to forget about it. Yeah. So really
absolutely.
great advice.
I mean, guided surgery is one of those things.
Yeah.
I know. I feel like me and you sometimes with guided surgery, just banging that drum till the cows come home. And like some people will listen, but there's some people who just never will. And it's like, why would you not do it? I just don't understand. Like, there's no reason with the modern technology that we have not to do it, other than either God complex because you're so good at freehanding it that you don't need to do it.
Yeah.
Or you just don't want to spend the money, which is like completely the wrong way to look at things. Like, because you are going to spend the money and the time and the stress later down the line when you've got an implant straight out the buccal plate and you're like, right, how do I restore this now? Oh, okay, the lab bill's twice as much because you've got to use an angled screw channel or whatever. Yeah. It's crazy.
Makes total sense. Well, Simon, thanks for coming on. You're a busy guy. You run 4 businesses. You have a podcast. You have a family. I appreciate the 40 minutes that you've taken here to help spread the word about mental health. So yeah, it's always fun talking to you, and hope to see you in 2021 in person. Hopefully.
Sure. Let's make it happen.
Pray for that. All right.
All right, bud. All the best.
Thanks.
Stay safe.
Bye.
Bye.
Some really great concepts from Simon. Again, check out his podcast that he just came out with called One Small Change. Lightside course cart is open only until Sunday. So 6 more days, sign up. We've already got a bunch of signups, 6 more days, and then it's closed, and we're not having this course until summertime. So thanks so much. Contact me if you want to get into the course, and I appreciate you guys watching. Happy Tuesday.